It's time for Recipe of the Day. Meatballs are your friend, especially if they're in your freezer. Okay, let me tell you how this meatball stroganoff recipe got onto my regular dinner rotation. So a few months ago at the grocery store, there was a lady doing those samples, and she was doing samples of these beef meatballs. And I was like, sure, I'll taste one of your meatballs. And so I'm tasting it. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And she goes, oh, they're on sale for BOGO, like buy one, get one free. And I was like, oh, well, then I'll get some. So I bought these 2 bags of frozen meatballs. Now, I have bought frozen meatballs before, but usually because I was going to use them in a recipe, like I'm doing some kind of like quick sweet and sour meatball thing or something. I've never just like had them in my freezer, these big bags of meatballs there before. And so I had these 2 bags of meatballs in the freezer. And one night I was like, oh no, what am I going to make for dinner? I need something quick. And I was like, I wonder if I can use meatballs in like my normal stroganoff recipe, but they're like fully cooked beef already. You know, I already thought I was pretty brilliant at this point. Like, oh, that's actually really smart. So I made it and everybody gobbled it up and loved it. And then I was like, oh, well, good, because I've got another whole bag of those in the freezer. The other whole bag I actually did again a few weeks later and wrote down exactly what I did. So that was the start of having this recipe become one on the website. And now it is here. So you can use any kind of meatball in this recipe that you like, as long as they are fully cooked, just because you don't want them falling apart in the mixture. They would cook through, but they would be, you know, a little bit softer on the outside, and they can possibly fall apart as they're simmering in the sauce. I will say the exception to this is those quick sausage meatballs that I talk about sometimes. Basically, you take just regular Italian sausage links and take the casing off of them and then just pull it apart into little clumps and roll them up. You could just drop those straight into the sauce. That will work. But other than that, you really do want them to be fully cooked. Those ones just hold together really well. That's why they're okay. So you either want to buy store-bought fully cooked meatballs or make your own meatballs and then cook them and then freeze them. I like to freeze them like on a tray that I've lined with wax paper, and then I put them sort of not touching each other on the tray, freeze them. Once they're fully frozen, then I put them into a bag and they stay not clumped together, just kind of separated, and I can pull out the number that I need. So I will link to the sausage meatballs I mentioned and to my favorite baked meatball recipe and to an air fryer turkey meatball recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode in case you want to make your own, or like I said, buy them from the grocery store, and they can either be still frozen or thawed when you start making this recipe. All that's going to change is how long they simmer in the sauce for. Now, this recipe does not use a can of cream of mushroom soup. Instead, we're going to make a mushroom sauce, a really easy one. But after I'm done telling you how to do the recipe, I will tell you how to substitute in that can of cream of mushroom soup in case that is what you're craving. So what you're going to do is you're going to get 8 ounces of medium or wide egg noodles, and you're going to cook them according to the package directions, which is going to be a large pot of boiling water with salt in it, and then the noodles go in there. So while the water is coming up to boil and then while the noodles are cooking, you're going to get the sauce ready. I'll just say once those noodles are done cooking, you'll drain those in a colander in the sink, put them back into the pot that you cook them in, put the lid on, set them off to the side, and they will be just fine by the time the sauce is done. Okay, so while the water is boiling and the noodles are cooking, you are going to get out a big skillet and you're going to heat a tablespoon of oil in there, and then you're adding 8 ounces of sliced mushrooms to that, and that is over medium-high heat, and you're just cooking them, stirring occasionally for 3 to 4 minutes, just until they're softened. Then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter to that. Cut it into some slices first so that it melts quickly. And so you're adding that butter into there, stir until it's melted, then sprinkle 2 tablespoons of flour over top. Stir that, and then add a cup of beef broth over there, and you're going to stir that really well until it's well combined. And then you're adding a half teaspoon of garlic powder, a half teaspoon of onion powder, a half teaspoon of paprika, a half teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Okay, now you're just going to keep cooking and stirring that until it's thickened. And then you're adding in 1 pound of pre-cooked meatballs. They can be still frozen or thawed. And you're just going to cook those, stirring occasionally until they're heated through. It'll be 8 to 10 minutes if they're thawed, 15 to 18 minutes if they're still frozen. Now, the sauce is going to reduce a little bit while they're cooking in there. And so if they're taking longer, if you have the frozen ones that are taking longer to cook, your sauce might get like too thick and kind of stodgy, in which which case you'll just stir in a little bit more beef broth, a quarter cup at a time as needed. Then once those meatballs are heated through, you will take that off the heat and stir in 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. And then you're going to taste the sauce and add, if you'd like, some more salt and pepper. And you can optionally add in a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, 1/2 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons, just to your taste as needed. And then you'll take the lid off the noodles and give them a stir, divide them among your dinner plates, and top them with the meatballs and sauce. So easy. Now, if you wanted to use the can of cream of mushroom soup instead, what you do is omit that first step. So don't do the oil or the mushrooms or the butter or the flour. Instead, you're just going to put the can of cream of mushroom soup into the skillet, and then you're going to add the 1 cup of beef broth and all those seasonings to there and give that a stir and a taste, and then you're going to add the meatballs to that. So it's basically the same idea. You still need the beef broth in there to thin it out enough that you can have the meatballs kind of being stirred and moving around in there. You might still need to add more beef broth later, depending on how long the meatballs are taking to cook in the sauce. And the only other thing that changes is you're going to need less sour cream because that cream of mushroom soup already has the creaminess. So you're just going to start with 2 tablespoons of sour cream, stir that in, and then you can add a little bit more if you want. You can still taste and add more salt and pepper, and you can still add Worcestershire sauce at the end if you'd like as well. But yeah, it's pretty much the same. You're just skipping the oil, the mushrooms, the butter, and the flour. Everything else is exactly the same. Okay, I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is September 16th of 2025. And if you love this recipe, make sure you leave a comment and a 5-star rating at the bottom of it. Let me know that you tried it and what you thought, and that 5 stars, that helps other people find this recipe and my websites and my podcast too, because they see those stars on Google and they're more likely to click over. So make sure to leave the 5 stars and the comment on this recipe or on any of the recipes from the websites that you've tried that you have loved. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast recipe of the day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.